Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Detroit News College Football Show. I am John Niyo, columnist here at the News. This is not Wojo. Wojo had his birthday yesterday. We gave him the day off. This is Tony Paul, co-host of the Green Room podcast with our friend Matt Charboneau, who we will talk to in a little bit here. There was a game Saturday. It went about as well as Michigan State fans probably feared it would in Ann Arbor.
The worst, what was the score? 44
to 10 was the final score.
Worst blowout in the series since 2002, 49-3.
Which was not a year to remember for Michigan State fans.
It was the first Michigan State game I ever went to, and I sat in the Michigan student section, and they were so nice to us because they felt so bad.
And, I don't think they felt as bad Saturday. It just didn't appear that way on the field or off.
No.
But it was ugly from a Michigan State perspective, not so much from a Michigan perspective. And we will talk to our insiders for both programs here later on, Nick Hill and Chris Howard, excuse me. And we will talk about the games coming up. Michigan State's got Rutgers. Michigan goes to Indiana, both on the road. We'll talk a little bit about the game that we did see on Saturday. But first, there's even more news to talk about because Tuesday in East Lansing, Mark Dantonio decided to
shock the world.
I don't know if it's quite that shocking, but he did have some things to say when he asked about his future, which has been speculated about. And I'll just get your thoughts off the top here. He says, "Look, I'm coming back. I want to come back, complete the circle."
Yeah.
Different ways. I mean, it took him a little while to get to the direct. Do you think you'll be coaching this team for the season opener against Northwestern? Yes. Right. And then from there, he talked a little bit about his reasoning for saying so. What are your thoughts hearing it?
Well, the first thing that confused me about all that was that they opened the season next year against Northwestern, which I didn't understand and didn't really get.
That's the Big Ten part.
But it surprised me because, again, and we'll talk to Charboneau, Matt, in a minute, but it surprised me just because, it would not be ideal for him to go out now because they're so down. They're a shell of what they were just 4 or 5 years ago when they were going to the Rose Bowl and they were going to the playoff. But if you say you're coming back and you want to complete this circle and you want to get back to the mountaintop, I just don't know how long that's going to take. It's not going to be next year. They lose some personnel. They clearly have to make some offensive staff changes, which he alluded to, didn't really commit to anything. I just don't know how long. I don't think this is just a one-year commitment, and that's why this thing is a bit of a surprise to me. For them to get back to where they were is going to be a 3, 4, 5-year process, and I'm surprised he's committing to that long of a tenure.
And I don't know.
He's going to be pushing 70.
Right, exactly. And I don't know all the reasons behind him deciding to do this now, whether it's just simply a way to get people's minds off of 44 to 10 or a message to the administration or to the fan base
or both,
or to recruits or to even to his own team because they really do need something to latch onto at this point. It's been so long since they've won a game. But let's hear from the man himself, and you can hear what Mark Dantonio had to say on Tuesday.
I can't predict the future, but my intentions are to be the head football coach here. And I've always said I live in the present, though. I've always said that. And so, I can't, there's certain things that you have control of, and there's certain things you don't have control of. So I can't control everything, but my intentions are there, absolutely.
All right, we are joined now by your co-host of the Green Room, Matt Charboneau, our Michigan State beat writer. And Matt, not a lot going on there for you this week. Any thoughts? No, Mark Dantonio is the big news, obviously. Tuesday comes out and says he's coming back, essentially. What'd you make of all of that on Tuesday?
Well, I got to say, I don't know if I'm surprised that he's coming back. I'm surprised that it happened the way it did on Tuesday. I kind of expected the typical, Mark Dantonio presser where it's, I'm living in the moment. I'm not thinking about the future sort of things. And it kind of started that way. But then when he was asked directly whether he's going to be the coach at the opener next year, he was pretty clear. And the strange thing about it is I still see people talking about it and hear people talking about who's going to replace Mark Dantonio next year. I didn't come out of that thing thinking he's going to change his mind. I think it's pretty clear at this point that there's no one at Michigan State that's planning on firing Mark Dantonio. So this is completely up to him. That sounded pretty clear to me. Yeah, he used words like, well, I can't predict the future and not everything's in my control. But that would be if there was somebody at Michigan State that wanted to fire Mark. And I don't see that happening. To me, this was a pretty clear indication he intends to be back. And talking to some of the assistants later, Mike Dressel said, yeah, of course we knew that all along. It wasn't his intention to leave. So I'm surprised it came when it did. I don't know if I'm surprised overall that he's coming back. The big question from here, obviously, is what does he do with that staff? What does it look like next year? And he kind of, that's the question he kind of dodged a little bit and gave you the typical, well, we'll see after the end of the season. Because I think he's no dummy. He knows this has got to change a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the bigger question is, why is he coming back? I mean, I get it. He's got a legacy there. You know, he's the all-time winningest coach. But it's not just about coming back for 2020. There's a lot of issues with this team and the personnel. And most people that you would talk to would say that it's going to be a while before they turn this thing around. How long is this commitment for him?
Well, I mean, I think that's the clear thing to me. I don't, you know, some people have said, you know, just back for a year. I don't see that at all.
What good does that do? I mean,
right. That's why I'm saying, to me, it's if he's coming back next year, he's committing to being back for several years. I mean, 2-3 years at least, I would think, because you're right. This doesn't, I mean, they like some of their young players, and that's fine. We've seen a lot. We saw 12 of them play last week, 3 on the offensive line in particular that do look like they're playing okay. There are some playmakers offensively, but that doesn't solve all your ills next year to where you're suddenly a 10-win team competing for a championship. I mean, the recruiting is not where it should be right now. There's a lot, you know, there's issues in the back end defensively. They got to replace a ton of starters there next year. So no, this is not something that's going to change quickly. So I understand the question of why would he, but to me, him saying he's coming back indicates that he is in it for the long haul. Because just coming back for 1 year doesn't make any sense. So to me, this is him saying he's committed and he believes it can get turned around and he's the guy to turn it around. Now, a lot of people can disagree with that, but I think that's his thought process right now.
Right. I mean, you come back and, I mean, say they're a 9 or 10 win team this year and you come back to try to get over that hump one more time. That makes a lot of sense. To me, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, you can see the writing on the wall that this is not going to be a quick turnaround. And that's the biggest surprise for me, because I believe this has to be a 3, 4, 5 year even commitment if you're going to want to go out on top like most coaches do. And that's quite a commitment.
Yeah, Matt, let me ask you this too.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you think he felt compelled to say that this week? Obviously, coming off the embarrassing loss in Ann Arbor, but because the sort of drumbeat had been getting louder and louder. I mean, was this a message to recruits? Was this a message to the administration, to a president who didn't hire him? Because that's really the only unknown there at Michigan State right now, is to the board and the president. Or was it just a message to the fans?
Well, I mean, probably all of that to some extent. I mean, we see where the recruiting is right now, and it's not what it has been under him.
Awful.
So,
it's awful.
And he talked about that too yesterday about, you know, obviously teams are recruiting against him like that, you know, and who wouldn't, you know, if you're recruiting a Michigan State guy, you're going to say, hey, there's uncertainty there in the future. So I think that's absolutely some of the things they're hearing out on the recruiting trail. So I think that's a big part of it. But yeah, to the guys there too right now. I mean, like we said, they're playing a lot of young players now. These guys want to know what's going on too. They've lost, 6 guys went in the transfer portal. You want some idea of what's happening with this program. So I think all that timing kind of came into it there to try and give some people an idea, and maybe the administration too. Maybe part of it was like, hey, I don't know. Did he talk to anybody in the administration first before doing this? My guess is no. I think he's probably letting everybody in a whole lot of different places know this is my plan, this is my program, and I'm going to be here for it.
Yeah, well, it's such a weak administration right now. I mean, you have a new president who, I mean, no one really knows who the person is. You have an AD that's, a placeholder, you would think, from a lot of people's perspective. But, is his answer this week about coming back, is it binding, do you think? I mean, you think it's dead set done?
Well, to me, it is. Like I said, I've heard some people still speculating and saying how he can get out of it. I just don't see that. If you were sitting in that room with him yesterday, and when I'm talking to this guy for a lot of years, that he doesn't normally say stuff like that just to appease people. That's not really his style. My feeling is he believes 100% he will be the coach here next year. So I
I'm
know
just
some
surprised
people are
that
still
I'm
wondering.
just surprised that it's been so wishy-washy and no answer, and then all of a sudden, bam! Of course I'm coming back.
Yeah.
Like where the hell did that
And
come
the
from?
the other thing too is I don't know if he's really directly been asked. I know Wojo the week before, kind of said something. Do you think about your future? I mean, this time he was asked point blank, "Are you going to be the coach?" I mean, there's, you start dancing around that question, and then I think it's fair to say this is a guy who's looking to retire at the end of the year. So I don't know if he ever really got asked that directly, where he couldn't really answer any other way, either yes or no, right? And so I think that's probably why it came up this week. But again, I don't. To me, this is obviously not binding, but I just don't see this. I don't see him suddenly changing his mind at some point, after the season ends. I just don't.
All right, speaking of questions, there was a game Saturday, and after this game, or yesterday, you did talk to Brian Lewerke about, the game itself and the unraveling we saw on Saturday in Ann Arbor, but also about just the season and the expectations. So let's listen to what Brian Lewerke had to say.
Brian, you speak to the discipline or lack thereof. I know you had the 30 yards and penalties on the one play when you guys were driving. It was still tied. How disappointing it is to see those sorts of penalties and they play such a big role in the game?
Yeah, the refs were being touchy and about the calls, and respectfully so. They wanted to keep it safe in a rivalry game like that. It was maybe the guys just going at it, but they called it. So
When this team was playing for the year, you were thinking Big Ten championship, division, and all that. And finding the position where you need 2 wins just to make a bowl game. Can you kind of wrap your head around that, where this season is kind of gone?
yeah, I definitely didn't think that would be the situation we're in right now, but here we are, and we need these 2 wins to get to a bowl game. So
All right, we heard Brian Lewerke there. We've heard him say similar things here the last month and a half. It's been 50-some days since they last won a game. What did you see Saturday? Any surprises from you? And I guess as we pivot now to look at these last 2 games and bowl eligibility, which is what they've got left to play for at this point, anything you take away from Saturday's result in that regard?
Well, I don't think we were really surprised to see what we saw Saturday, to be honest. It's a lot like we saw against Ohio State. It was really more like the Ohio State game, fairly competitive for about a quarter and a half. And then the defense starts giving up big plays. You can't run consistently. The lack of discipline, I think, was maybe the one thing I would say.
They lost their minds.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, I'm not even talking late, the Jacob Panasiuk penalty, which was ridiculous.
That was gross.
Earlier in the game, the game's still tied and they're moving the ball and they get into Michigan's territory and, Cody White has the 20-yard gain. And, and he gets a 15-yard penalty for taunting. There's another 15-yard penalty on the same play. 30 yards of penalties on one play. I mean, that kills the drive.
Yeah.
And that game's tied at that point. And, you end up punting and downing the ball at the 2, but then Michigan, of course, drives 98 yards for a touchdown. And that kind of told you right there, this is going to kind of go the way we've seen all year. A team that's not disciplined, a team that isn't good enough, in the second half, certainly in the fourth quarter, a defense giving up. 14 of Shea Patterson's passes went for 15 yards or more. That's just indicative of the defense we've seen all year and the same issues on offense of not being able to consistently run the ball. So, that doesn't change much this week and next week. The only difference is they're playing Rutgers and Maryland, who are, 2 of the worst teams in the country. So you got a pretty good shot of getting to those 6 games in a bowl game. Where that takes them, who knows? But, it's not like
Right
getting
here to
6
Detroit,
wins.
Matt.
Maybe, and it's not like you're dying to get to that bowl, but it's more avoiding
Right.
not being bowl eligible, right? That's kind of about the only thing you have left to play for. Now, you'd rather say, well, at least we made a bowl, as opposed to you didn't even do that, and to not do that, you'd have to lose to Rutgers or Maryland, which
Yeah.
Well, I want to say
maybe
first
that
off,
changes.
I don't understand these. I don't understand these taunting penalties. I think they're funny. Like, I don't understand it. It's so dumb to
Yeah,
me.
I agree.
I wish they would get rid of that rule. I think it's ridiculous. But here's why you want to become bowl eligible, because bowl eligible right now is Michigan, Central Michigan, Western Michigan, Eastern
As
Michigan.
if that matters.
Every team
Come
in
on.
the state is bowl eligible, and All 5 teams have never been bowl eligible in the same season.
There you go.
So
But
that's
why does that
a
matter to
little
Michigan
fun.
State?
It doesn't matter to Michigan State.
doesn't.
It's a fun fact, you grump. Like, it's just fun.
It does matter.
But
in
it
the
does.
sense
You
that,
still want to get to a bowl.
You
I mean,
talked about it earlier. All these young, they're playing, 12 true freshmen Saturday. I wonder how much we're going to see now more. We saw Devontae Dobbs come in there Saturday. These next 2 games and then the possibility of bowl practice, et cetera, I think that's important for those guys. But do you think we'll see even some changes? We heard from Brian Lewerke there. Will we see a Rocky Lombardi, Theo Day in these next 2 games in any sort of anything other than mop-up duty, perhaps?
Probably not. All the feedback we're getting, and we talked to Brad Salem and Mike Tressel last night, the coordinators, and the goal right now for them is to win 2 games. And Mark Dantonio said it, and Brad Salem said it too. It's Brian Lewerke's their best chance to do that. They're worried about winning 2 games right now. So even defensively, there is a balance. They admit there's a balance right now of getting some of those guys some action, yet still needing to win 2 games. The interesting part is some of those guys are your best option right now. So you need to play them and for them to play well. But for guys like Lewerke like that, I wouldn't expect something to change there at all. That leads into bigger questions of what's the quarterback position look like moving forward. But to close this season, I think it's Brian Lewerke the whole way. I can't see a lot of significant changes other than that.
No, you got to.
Offensively,
you got to get a lead in these games.
Well, they had a lead last week, right?
Yes, they did. They sure did, and it lasted a long time. Charboneau flies back to Newark for the second time in 2 weeks. He went there for the Seton Hall game, the basketball game. Where Michigan State, theoretically, they haven't won in 50-some days. They should beat Rutgers, okay? I would hope. Then they come back, which would make a whopper of a Maryland home game to close out the season to see if the team can become bowl eligible. And by the way, you can you mentioned the little Green Room podcast. You can go to the Green Room page on Facebook and like the Facebook page and leave a comment. And we're going to give away tickets to that Maryland-Michigan State thriller.
Plenty of good seats available, I'm guessing, but
a few.
These are be free.
But amazingly, we put this thing on Facebook about a week ago, and people actually are interested in going to the game. So if you want to, you can like the Facebook page, and you can go see them potentially become bowl eligible, like every other damn team in Michigan.
You can go ahead and like the Facebook without trying to get some tickets out of it, too.
What's that?
You can like the Facebook.
Well, yeah, you
just
can
to
do
like
that too,
it.
but we're bribing you. We're bribing. Yeah, we got a little quid pro quo.
Oh, there we
We're gonna
go.
do a little bribery.
All right,
so you can go to the page and maybe get some tickets.
and listen to the podcast
Yes,
as well.
absolutely.
All right, they are 23-point favorites against Rutgers, which is a historically awful football team this year. I think they actually did cover against Ohio State last week.
They cost a lot of people a lot of money.
There's no way they can lose this game, fair to say, but what's your prediction? Let's go there.
Yeah, I would say there's
Not to
probably
put you
a
on
way.
the spot, right? Yeah,
There's a way. When you haven't won in 50 days, there's a way.
Last year was close. Last year was close enough, right?
Yeah, it's not terribly likely though. Rutgers is awful. You would think you cover the spread here, but when's the last time Michigan State scored? Against Illinois, they certainly scored 123.
Right.
But I think they cover. I think this is not very close. And when Rutgers' big victory in the last few weeks was scoring 3 touchdowns against Ohio State while giving up 7, 8 touchdowns. That's their big victory. They're feeling good about that. So I think Michigan State wins pretty easily. Something like a 31-3, maybe 34-7 sort of thing. I'll say 34-7 will be my official pick.
All right.
I hope you don't gamble professionally.
What's your pick there, smart guy?
10 to 6.
We got to make our picks too. I will go
10 to 6.
I will go 28-7.
All right. I'm going 10-6.
10-6.
Yeah.
By the way, Rutgers is looking at this game going, this is our shot. Michigan State fans are like, oh, we can't lose to Rutgers. Rutgers is, they're looking at this game going, this is it. This is our week.
Yeah, that has not helped them to date, but you're right.
They can look at it however they want. They're still bad.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Matt. And as you mentioned, listen to the Green Room, listen to the podcast, like the Facebook page.
Absolutely.
And then you can go hang out with Matt,
Yeah.
the Maryland game.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see
Bye.
you, Matt.
Have fun in Maui.
Bye.
All right, joining us now is Nick Hill, our Michigan State insider, a member of the 2013 Big Ten championship team. Nick,
That seems so long
it
ago.
does seem like a long time ago. And Nick, before we talk about Saturday, I think we'll ask you the same thing we talked to Matt about. Mark Dantonio obviously came out Tuesday and sort of tried to provide some clarity, I guess, when it comes to his future, and essentially says he's back next year. He plans to be back, wants to be back. Any surprise in hearing that to you? And I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
I watched that, and I'm not surprised. He is a guy that, unless the mission is done, unless he has something in his mind that he wants to accomplish and has something he wants to do. Until that's done, until that's accomplished, he's, not the person to, really step away, cave under pressure, to outside influences, or, what kind of the fan base is really talking about or really want. He's a guy who I think has a vision in his mind, something he wants to do. He's achieved a lot of different things in regards to 3 Big Ten championships, division championships that we had when they split up the Big Ten conference. A lot of guys go to the NFL, the winningest head coach, but I'm not surprised he's a guy that has something, I think, more he has to prove and wants to prove. And I knowing him, and his answer, I think, was spot on what he wants to do.
What do you think it is? I mean, he talks about completing circles. I'm sure you heard that at some point in your time there as well. But what do you think? What is going to be the right time for him in his mind, do you think? And do you think before this season he thought this might be his last year, and then the way it's gone, obviously he's just not ready to leave this way?
Mm-hmm. I think that I think if he didn't win a Rose Bowl, that could have been something, but he got that done in 2014. I just think that he's not the guy who's going to, want to have consecutive losing seasons and all of a sudden just leave. I think he's going to want to have this, the program finish on a high note, have a good season, either compete or win another Big Ten championship. I think he's not done winning those. I think he wants to go back to Indy one more time, get it done one more time, goes to the Rose Bowl one more time, if not the college playoffs. So I think that could be the circle that he's still trying to complete. The last time we did it was in 2015, and I think he just wants to get there and get it done one more time, potentially before he rides off into the sunset.
All right, so Saturday was not sunset. It was very dark and gloomy for Michigan State. I mean, everybody predicted a Michigan win. You did as well. I think you had more of a lower scoring prediction. But what did you see on Saturday, and I guess how hard was it for you to watch?
It was difficult, very difficult to watch. Playing Michigan when I was there, and kind of the teams I was a part of, the few years before me, and even 2 years after I left. And to see the team that was out there, you can definitely tell they came up fired up. They played well the first few drives. Then you can definitely tell they got worn down. Offensively, we're making too many mistakes. They couldn't tell you how many tip balls that we knocked up, then the other guy picks it off. It was an incomplete offense out there. We looked frazzled. We didn't look like we can establish a run game very much. Our quarterback did not look very comfortable posed in the pocket. We really get many very separations on the offense, and defensively, I think we did as much as we possibly could, especially there in the first quarter at least. Then you could definitely tell we start to fall down, start to miss assignments. But the big difference that I've noticed is that we just don't have any swagger to us. We don't have any pep. We don't have any, to me, I won't even say pride, a sense of, I think you walking in and see how they play is we're expected to lose. I mean, things have not gone our way, of course. You have the heart and soul of the team, in my opinion, Wabachi out, due to his episode. And, you're missing that aspect of it. Offensively, there's no pep, there's no spark, there's nothing on it. So I felt like we were a team that looked inferior out there. We looked flat. We didn't even look like Michigan State, in my opinion. And so it's tough seeing that progress, as the game continues to go on, that you want to, regardless of the outcome, regardless of the score, you should play hard every single play. And I could definitely tell we just didn't bring that spark to the game. And it was tough watching it.
Other than that, it went really well.
In saying all that, and we talked about it last week and the week before, et cetera, they do need something positive. Rutgers, I guess, presents that opportunity, but what are you looking for this week from this team as they now had to play a team they should absolutely beat? But like you said, they don't look like a team that thinks they can win games right now.
Exactly. I see us, and knowing the coaching staff and knowing Coach Dantonio, that obviously Big Ten championship's not there. You know, you lost to all the rivals. What matters and what's on the table right now is being bowl eligible. Mm-hmm. So going to a bowl game and not going to a bowl game are two completely different things. They didn't go to a bowl game at 16. They were 3-9, so they know that experience. They know what that feels like, and these seniors know what that means. So the seniors, what's on the table is for these seniors to go out bowl eligible, go to a bowl game, and play their last game at a bowl game, not at Spartan Stadium against Maryland here 2 days after Thanksgiving. But it's to go out winning a bowl game, finishing out on top. And so that's what's on the table. And so these guys, I expect them to go out and play with desperation, in my opinion. To go out and have a desperation and play like that is on the line, because it is. And I've been in that situation too. 2012, we went to Minnesota. We had that, we had to win that game in order for us to be bowl eligible. Thank God we did. It was a shootout. It was a close one. Ultimately, we did. And is a different feeling going to a bowl game like we did, beat TCU, going to next season, having 2013 seasons that we did, compared to not going to a bowl game. Now you're just like, what? You're at home and watching it. So I expect these guys to come out fired up, and that you're expected to beat Maryland. Rutgers. You expect to beat Rutgers. You should beat Rutgers. And I expect us to play with some enthusiasm, with a purpose, and to play like Spartans, like we should be, and know how to play.
You see, another important thing about going to a bowl game, you got to get that bowl game swag.
Oh yeah,
they give
right.
you, right?
Oh, right.
It's different.
Don't they give you gifts?
Going to a bowl game and getting the gear, getting the gifts. Trust me, that is something we definitely look forward to.
What did you get? Did you get any fun gifts from these bowl games that you went to?
Oh my God! Besides all the gear and memorabilia that I have, wow, Best Buy cards weren't that bad. Those are pretty cool.
Yeah, right. Yeah. All right, let's hear a prediction from you, Nick, before we let you go. Rutgers.
Well, unlike last week, I'm going to give us a victory this week. I think we should be able to have the spark, have the pep. I think this is going to, again, it's a do or die type of situation. So I'm going to have us winning 24-7.
All right, you heard it here first.
Thanks,
Nick. We'll see you. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, Nick.
Sounds good, guys. Thank you.
All right, we are joined now by our Michigan insider, Chris Howard, former Michigan running back, former national champion with the 1997 team, and the host of the popular podcast, co-host of the popular podcast, The Player and the Fan. Chris, you predicted Michigan to win 35-14, I believe. You were almost right. It was a blowout. And it was the offense I think we spent most of the last few months talking about, wondering about. There it was. That was the Michigan offense that sort of was advertised, was it not?
Yeah, that's exactly what we've been waiting for. We've been waiting to see kind of this offensive explosion, and I think we saw it this past weekend. I think Josh Gaddis, his ability to call a clean game was on display. I think the offense showed their ability to play a clean game and not have turnovers and not shoot themselves in the foot. So, I think we're happy with what we saw this weekend. I think we knew going into this game, Michigan State's front seven was going to be stout, and they were. We knew they were going to be, content with stopping the run, because Michigan is known for always wanting to establish the run. But I think what we saw this weekend was Michigan's ability to adapt and to find a different way to attack the defense and make the defense guard the entire field, and that's what Josh Gaddis and his offense did, and they did a really good job at that.
Why do you think it has taken so long to kind of get to this point? Michigan's really rolling right now. They look like a national powerhouse again the last few weeks. But why do you think it's taken so long to get to this point? Do you think it's just kind of some growing pains with a new coordinator? Is it as simple as that?
That's a good question. I think it's a combination of things. I do think it has a lot to do with having a new coordinator, guys getting used to different terminology, getting used to different route trees, different combinations. So I think it has a lot to do with just the install of this offense is really taking them a long time to make those adjustments. And then on top of that, going into this season, Michigan offense didn't really have an identity. They didn't know who they wanted to be. They knew they always wanted to be kind of a true smash mouth, run the ball type offense. But in this day and age, you have to have some flexibility because teams understand what you're trying to do, and you have to be flexible enough to be able to make those adjustments. So I think it took, Michigan and the players to get used to Josh Gaddis, and I think it took some time for Josh Gaddis to get used to who his personnel is. And so I think now you see these guys are clicking, and he understands what he has.
On the defensive side, I mean, this is now another game where just dominant performance, the turnovers, they're really flying. This is also sort of the defense people were wondering about, the speed and space on the offensive side. Well, it's the speed that we heard about all offseason with this defense, and now we really seem to be starting to see that on the field, are we not?
So, yeah, I think what we're seeing right now is I think you're seeing this defense kind of really coming to themselves. Earlier in the season, Don Brown gave them a lot of praise about being maybe the fastest defense he's coached, and that's a lot of praise given considering what he lost the previous year. But what I think you're seeing is Don Brown has put his players in a position to be successful. He's running a lot of more zone. He's not getting caught in those crossing routes like he did a lot the last previous years. And I think this defense suits his players. And that's one thing as a coach is you have to be able to put your guys in the best position to be successful, and they have to be able to adapt. And I think Don Brown's heard the criticism. I think he's his own self-evaluator. He went in, looked at the tape, made some off-season changes, and I think now you're seeing his team play aggressive. They're playing fast, but they're playing comfortable.
The big test, the one everybody, of course, focuses on, is in 2 weeks. Before then, they've got to go down to Indiana, where the last 2 times they've gone there, they've gone to overtime. Indiana has not beaten Michigan since 1987, I believe, 23 in a row. But these games have been really close, and this is the sort of the prototypical trap game. Is it, before Ohio State, after a big win over a rival? What do you see this week?
Indiana team that's playing well.
Yeah, and an Indiana team that is, it's 7 wins. And what do you see this week as the key, and I guess what are you looking for on Saturday?
Well, honestly, I don't think you can look at Indiana as a trap game anymore because this is not the Indiana of old. Indiana has been playing some really good football for quite some time. Their offense has always been able to put up numbers, put up points up against really good teams. Like you said earlier, the last few times we've played Indiana, they've been shootouts. So it's always come to the wire. So I don't really look at this game as a trap game. I think this is a Michigan team that's facing a really good Indiana team. There's a lot of familiarity between both these programs. They both know what they each want to do, what they each want to accomplish. So I think for Michigan, I think they've kind of embraced the idea of one game, one play at a time. And I think that's the way you have to approach it because the Ohio State game isn't going anywhere. The game is not going anywhere. So, there's no need to overlook playing Indiana, worried about, the Ohio State game. Obviously, you want to have that in the back of your mind. But right now, it's all about Indiana because, like I said, Indiana can't put up points. They've got a running back well over 800 yards. I think they got a receiver close to 800 yards receiving. Peyton Ramsey is playing some really good football. He played as a true freshman. So this is a good Indiana team. So this is not something that anyone should overlook or sleep on.
Yeah, and that Indiana defense has actually played really well this year too. I mean, better than we've seen. All right, so it's time. Prediction. What do you got, Chris?
Man, you know what? We played them close the last few years, and I think it's going to be a close game this year. But I'm going to go 28-21 Michigan.
All right. Well, it is. I think the weather might be a factor too. I think it might be a little cold and rainy down in Bloomington, despite the sunshine that Angelique Shengelis will bring with her on her way. But I will go. I'll say. I think the offense is rolling right now. I will say 31-20 Michigan.
31-20? Cool. And I don't care.
There you go. All right, Chris. We will talk to you next week. I believe there's a game you'd like to talk about next week, so we will talk about that next week.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, guys. Have a good one.
All right. We'll
Thanks,
see you, Chris.
Chris.
Thanks. All right. That wraps up another edition of the show here. But before we go, we should, again, give a little plug again for the Green Room podcast, Tony and Matt.
Follow us on Facebook as well.
Taping that tonight, probably.
Yeah, we're
I
going to
would
tape
assume.
and we'll talk about all sorts of good, and basketball. We talk about
That's
basketball
right.
too. They
That's
got a
right.
little basketball program down the road. So.
It is getting very close to being officially basketball season.
Yes,
right?
it's,
I think it's already passed.
Thank God.
And also Angelique's view from the press box, not view from the podcast. It's the
No,
view
Wojo's
from the
not
press
here.
box.
We don't need to use
you can
Wojo's
find
bits.
those where? You can find those Spotify, iTunes, all over, wherever you can
Yeah,
find podcasts.
Barnes and Noble, I don't know, somewhere. You can find them. You can find them on the Detroit News website. That's
That's the
place.
easiest way to do it. DetroitNews.com. You can also find all our coverage, Michigan State, and some of those other MAC schools you
Hey,
mentioned earlier.
they're all going
Eastern
bold.
with a big win last
Yeah.
night is bowl eligible as well. Third time in 4 years, second time in a row, first
That's
time in
just
program
amazing.
history. Chris
I mean-
Creighton. I have a feeling we're going to be talking about Chris Creighton at some point again.
Maybe
too.
moving, maybe.
Yeah, he's going to get some attention.
I thought he
soon.
might be a guy they might talk about if
In East
somebody from
Lansing.
East Lansing
Yeah,
might have
right.
taken the out. But
Well, that may be another day. But in the meantime, stick with us for all your coverage. And enter that picks contest with Wojo.
Wojo,
I think
yeah, he's
still-
not very good.
I think he's still undefeated with his best bets.
well,
But
best
anyway.
bets are best
Anyway.
bets. I mean, those are easy.
We'll see you next week.